Hi, so there seems to be enough interest in that Salmonfly small trailer I did, the adult, so I'm going to show you how to tie this pattern. I was requested to do that, so here's a small video on it. So all I'm doing is I've mounted a 6mm Salmonfly booby foam on my tube vise, the thinnest needle I have. I'm going to rib it and build segments with it with the Salmonfly 6.0 Nana classic wax thread in a fluoro orange. So I start with by holding 4 or 5 inches of the material, the thread, in my hand, and then I'll just start doing 4 wraps, spin the tag end over top, do 2 more wraps, spin the tag end over top again, because this helps secure and bind the thread on that segment. And then I'll whip finish with 3 or 4 turns of the thread to create the whip finish knot. I try to bring all the thread into one position. That may mean taking the tag end and stripping it back and pulling it down so both knots are landed in exactly the same spot. So when I go to do a finishing coat with head cement to secure the threads, it all locks down in the same place. So the next segment, I'll just do the same. I'll space out the thread bit, create that segment, 3, 4 turns, go around once, twice, go around a second time, 2 more turns, and then again the whip finish. And by pulling on the thread and keeping it in a downward position, I assure that all the knots are landed in the same place. So there we go, that's all done there. Now, adult stoneflies do have, well, certainly in my area, have a bright orange coloration in the segment itself, so that's why we've chose orange. The body itself is kind of a salmon color, so we will get that when we burn the foam to create the flat profile of the Salmonfly. The adults have a very long, flat body profile, so I try to incorporate that. It also helps the fly to ride or land better. And again, so the order of doing this is, don't put the head cement on and then burn it. So at this point, what now I'll do, I'll just use a lighter and I'll just warm it up, and then I'll squish it between my finger and thumb, and you can see how much that has changed the profile of the body itself, and it has given it a bit of a burnt finish. And the knots are on top here now, so what I'll do is I'll just take a little bit of head cement and drop it on each of the segments, and that just helps secure the thread from coming undone. In the future, when it's on the water, after it's seen a little bit of action from the fish. The last thing I do, the last 2 things I do to the body is I remove it from the needle, and then I'll take a pair of curved scissors and I'll do a cut at 45-degree angle from that first rib into the tail, so I create a nicely shaped taper on the tail, and then down the center of the front end of the tube I'm just making an incision with it, or a cut with the scissors straight down the center, and then this will wrap around the hook shank when I go to tie it in. You can see there, so when I tie it down, tie it in, it'll wrap around the full hook shank all the way around, and it's easier to secure it that way. Okay, so what I've done here is I've mounted up a clink hammer hook, just in a size 8, and what we'll do is we'll just start with some waxed 6.0 classic wax thread. That's all I'm using for the the tie-in, and we'll just start behind the hook eye and lay down touching turns, do a catch, lay down touching turns to the top of the bend on the clink hammer, which is just sort of in front of the hook point, and then I'll move back from there. Again, with touching turns behind the hook eye, and I'm just building up 3 layers here. I just feel that it's easier or better for the foam to grab into it, and for the deer hair when I spin it at the front to grab into it. Gives it a good solid sound base to work off of. So now I'll just take my foam body, and what I've done is I've just cut a little split in here, and that'll wrap around either side of the hook shank. Make sure my thread's flat, or relatively flat, and I'll offer it in so that the foam, the front end of the foam, will just sit slightly behind the hook eye. Okay, and then we'll just do some open turns to lash that part of the body down. And we'll just come to the back with some tight turns. Go in under the body, come in, set over top, come in under the body a second time, set over top. That just gives it a bit of support and holds it into place, and it won't turn or rotate on you while it's on the hook shank. So there's 2 types of wings I do. Dave Whitlock wrote about a fluttering stone where the wing is spread and fanned, and then a flat, low profile, a low rider, is I believe what he called it. So this pattern I'll tie more so in the flared wing or the fluttering wing, and I found fishing it on rivers, it does make a difference at times, where the fish will react better to a fluttering wing versus a low rider. So I've just cut out some elk hair here, a bit of a darker elk hair, and I'll just hair stack that. I'm hair stack a little tap on the table, and then before I pull it out of the barrel, I just rotate the barrel, and there the ends are all nicely stacked. So when I do tie this in, I try to have the wing just slightly longer than the body length. So once I've measured it off and I'm happy with it, then I'll do 2 or 3 turns and flare the wing. Make sure everything's centered on me. And if I like that, then I'll take my scissors and just run a little cut using the curve of the scissors to create a bit of a concave shape and a cut. And that'll give my thread something to run down as opposed to having a flat sheared cut and creating a step in that area. So now we'll just do touching turns, or open turns but tight, and then go back. And I'll just double check my fly. If I'm happy with it, wonderful. Okay, I'm happy with that. So now I'll bring my thread forward, up behind the hook eye, and half hitch. I'll add a little bit of Mercury M300M. It's similar to a Zap-A-Gap, except it's waterproof and UV resistant. And you can apply it on patterns, or even it'll add and adhere to surfaces that are wet, so I really like working with it. So now I'll take a little bit of brown deer hair, just a small clump of it. Cut it flush to the skin. But I won't stack this, but I will clean it with a dubbing brush Make sure all the hairs, under fur is all nicely cleaned out. And then I'll measure it into position. So I want my tip ends to come roughly back, about back of the bend. So just by adjusting in my fingers, in my right hand, I've just now created the cutoff point here. So now I'll take a pair of long scissors and try to make a singular cut. And then reposition that in my right hand with the butt ends right behind the hook. Eye position there. I'll go around 2 or 3 times and I'll spin the hair around, make sure it's all engulfed around the hook. And before I let it all go, I'll take a few turns with my thread. And now I can clean up this area here where the short ends have been flared. And if I can find that initial tie-in point, I can just have my scissors sort of follow that. I think I'm happy with that. And I'll just make a few extra wraps to secure all this. And then bring my thread to the back again in front of the hook point. So at this point I'll use a bit of a hair stacking tool. It's really just a Bic pen that I use with the cartridge removed to push the hair back. And it works quite well. It helps give a nice tight bullet shaped head. So yeah, it's just a Bic pen with the refill removed. And the tip end, so this style of Bic pen had a narrower tip, and then you could remove that if you needed a little larger opening, or use the back end. And I've put Velcro on this, so it's also works as a dubbing tool, or as a brush, a dubbing brush. And now I'll just push the head back. Now I like the clear pen so I can see where how far the pen has gone down the hair. And I'll do 1, 2, 3 turns and pull tight, and that'll flare the legs. But I've got a relatively clean head, so what I'll do now is just build up some thread here. At this point the orange thread also will become a bit of a hot spot, so I can see the fly in the water. You might want to add on top a piece of yarn, fluorescent yarn, if you like, which you can certainly do, and I certainly do that on the lowrider patterns, not as much on the fluttering wing patterns. And now we'll just add in a set of rubber legs, and you can use any kind of rubber you want, segmented or a square rubber or round rubber for legs. And I just happen to have some olive or some oil stained rubber legs here. I like the darker legs on this pattern because the natural is a bit darker, and I like the oil stain finish because I get a bit more glare off the sun for that. And then I'll just pull the legs around to the one side here, and I'll just pull on it until I have that rubber leg at the back of the first segment. So I'm sort of happy with that. Oops. Measure again. We're happy with that, and then I'll take the other side and add it on approximately the same length. So this is just one way of putting on rubber legs. There's certainly other ways. And once I'm happy with that, I'll split the legs. Go to that side, come around to this side, and then again just position them so that they're relatively flat, and then I can pull tight and do a couple of whip finishes here at the collar. One more. On the outside of just cleaning up the fly a bit, and remove the hair here on the bottom of this pattern so it rides as low as possible in the water. So a similar version of this was shown to me by Barry Mitchell in 1984, and it was tied with a salmon-colored polypropylene body. And since the 6mm buoy foams came out, here in Canada, I've been using that on many stoneflies, whether it's the Salmonfly or the golden stone or the squala stones or the grasshoppers patterns I tie. I use the same body design and tie them the same way, and always on a clink hammer hook because I like the hook riding deeper in the water. So for me, I'm finding I'm just getting better positive hookups. So I hope you got something out of that. Thank you very much for watching, and have a wonderful day.